Notre Dame USC weekend. I know that it's not necessarily the marquee matchup on the field 2021 version that we've grown accustomed to in the past, but still, especially for an old timer like me, man, you get those two uniforms, those two names on the marquee, and there's something special. It is the greatest national rivalry in college football. I don't think there's any doubt. Talking Notre Dame football for the next hour or so, something in that range. Nathan Urbach's on the line from Golden Homers. So Nathan has his podcast, Golden Homers. Got to check that out. And also hosts our post-game coverage at the Voice of College Football. So this Saturday, USC Notre Dame, after the game, you can either go to the Notre Dame channel, which we're simulcasting on right now, or you can go right here just at the main channel and catch Nathan. And typically Ben Belden joins him to break down Notre Dame football after the game. Hey, Nathan, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing well. Always happy to join. And obviously I know we haven't done one of these in a few weeks, but it would be nice to preview a game and kind of maybe put an outlook to Notre Dame's the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, this quarterback situation. Jack Cohen obviously comes in with the experience from Wisconsin. He hasn't played poorly, but with Tyler Buchner jumping in, obviously had to go to Drew Pine at one time, several times during key situations. And I think it was in particular, was it the Cincinnati game was an odd situation with all three playing pretty significant roles in that game. So just kind of catch everybody up to date. Obviously, the last effort was a game in Blacksburg with a last-second win on a field goal against Virginia Tech. But where this quarterback situation stands right now.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's been a revolving door. I think when Jack Cohen first transferred to Notre Dame, that it was sort of, just expected that he would be at least serviceable, at the least. And he would probably be the quarterback for the rest of the season and then they would kind of transition into Buchner, who's a high upside freshman currently. But there's a couple things going on. I mean, first and foremost, the offensive line has been a little shaky. And I think that is something when Jack Cohen is back there, it hasn't kind of lend itself to good offensive play for Notre Dame. Like I said, I don't want to call him a statue. I mean, this has sort of been talked about at nauseum on the post-game shows. Like, I don't think Jack Cohen's a statue of sorts, like some people do, but he is kind of slow progressing in everything that he does. And then on top of that, he's not a great runner. And so the few times that Drew Pine has come in, he's just a little bit twitchier in everything that he does. And he's kind of been labeled as sort of Ian Book light on Notre Dame message boards and Notre Dame Twitter, because similar style of play, similar arm strength, probably a little bit less athletic, but can definitely move the chains with his legs if need be. But first and foremost is a pocket passer, and that's what he wants to be. So as of right now, I mean, just to catch everybody up, it looks like it's Jack Cohen as the starter with Buchner sort of sprinkled in. The staff has kind of said the last couple of weeks that they really want to stick to one guy. And I think when they say one guy, they really mean out of Cone and Pine, because they bring similar attributes. And then Buckner's sort of the sprinkled in guy that can, offer stuff, offer the deep ball, offer big chunk yards with his legs. And then certainly I think he's, at least as of right now on campus, he's sort of the future at the quarterback position because of just the upside that he brings.
So Buckner's only been in a few games. He's hit 9 of 20 passes. Obviously, that's a small sample size. He's thrown 3 picks in the 20 attempts. You got Drew Pine, again, 15 of 32 touchdown passes. Jack Cohen obviously has had the bulk of the work, 62% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns and 3 picks. So are those stats? Those are stats. They're valid. They mean a lot, but they don't tell the whole story. Are they pretty indicative of what we see out of them as passers?
Well, I think it goes
that
back.
Would tell us that Cohen's by far the best passer. That's what all that would tell us.
I will say, I think it goes back to what I said about when Jack Cohen has time. When Jack Cohen has had time, or when Notre Dame is getting the ball out quick, like on 2-minute drills and just different things like that, they have been very good. Or he has been very good, moving the football. I mean, you look at Florida State. I mean, I know that was a close game in general, but that was probably Notre Dame's best offensive performance of the year. And Jack Coan was, for all intent and purposes, at least in the second half, was pretty brilliant. Just to be completely honest. And then as the offensive line has continued to get a little bit more shaky, I think it's actually trending back up, which is nice for him. You see like in that game against Virginia Tech that, those last couple drives, he had time to throw, but Notre Dame also got the ball out quicker into the playmaker's hands and he was able to make plays. So I do think the stats are indicative, but at the same time, they sort of don't paint the whole picture, I guess.
And so on a larger scale, we've seen a team that has not dominated anyone. The Florida State opening night game, now FSU is playing a little bit better football, but they've really not been a good football team most of the season. The Toledo game, come back in the last 90 seconds or so to score the game-winning touchdown there. Most recently, the Virginia Tech's a top 30 to 40 team in the nation, probably something in that range. It is a difficult place to play, Lane Stadium. Road game, night game, they win it there. They get the job done. Of course, Wisconsin's kind of an odd team because we think of them as being rock solid, top 15 team in the country, but they're just really bad offensively. Stellar defense. Notre Dame outplayed them, obviously just took it away in the fourth quarter, got the turnovers, ran away with the game. The game that, of course, tells us a whole lot is people are high on Cincinnati. Well, it's kind of strange because the same people that determine Notre Dame's really not good this year are sometimes the same people that are trumpeting Cincinnati as this college football. Well, you got to put them in the playoff if they win all the games, and they beat Notre Dame. That's their resume to get to the playoff. And that's pretty much the resume. They're not going to beat anybody else that's any good, really that good. So I'll take you to the Cincinnati game. What I saw in the Cincinnati game from a treetop perspective was that Cincinnati was, they had some level of control of the game. Notre Dame did have a couple spurts in the fourth quarter. They finally scored a touchdown, I think early fourth quarters when they first scored their first touchdown, got it to 17-13. And they actually could have put another drive together. If I remember correctly, they had one or two dropped passes that you're just like, and I had no rooting interest in it, but you're thinking, catch the ball and you got a 15-yard gain here. This is a killer with like 7-8 minutes left in the game. And then Cincinnati obviously ices the game with a score to make it 24-13. So they lose a 1-2 score game to Cincinnati at home. And that's, is all this pretty much come together as being what Notre Dame really is, which if you put it all together is, the record's good, but they're struggling to get by just about anybody you put on the field against them.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helps that the schedule has sort of lent itself to, to being able to be 5-1, at this point. I mean, I think, you look at it on the surface level, the schedule looks pretty good from a name basis, but a lot of teams are down. North Carolina's down, USC's down, Stanford's down. Virginia Tech is, probably what they usually are. Cincinnati's up, of course, but you're still talking about a group of 5 team, albeit the number 2 ranked team in the country. Wisconsin's down. I think they've showed that in other games besides the Notre Dame. So yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, Notre Dame, at least at 6 games in, they are what they are. I think there are positive signs of, kind of trending up. I think the offensive line played its best game against Virginia Tech. Which is certainly something. I mean, they have a new left side of the offensive line, and we can kind of see where they go from there with Joe Alt, the true freshman at left tackle, and then Andrew Kristofic at left guard. And they've sort of kind of been trending up, from center to the right side of the offensive line as well. But, it's going to really come down, obviously, to, like I said, the offensive line, and then just if the quarterback play can continue to improve. Maybe that will end up with, Buckner being a true freshman that just continues to elevate his play as the season goes on. And maybe, like I said, the offensive line continues to get better, and Jack Cohn has more time and he shows what he can do. But yeah, no, it's hard to argue with what you said. I mean, as of right now, I mean, they're a team that could easily go 10-2, 11-1, but never look good in any of those games.
So we're looking at an offensive line factory. They have just, of course, elevated players to the NFL at a regular basis for the last 5 years or so, and been a dominant offensive front year after year after year. So when that's happening, of course, there's talent acquisition through recruiting, there's development, and I'll say this all the time, that for most teams, the offensive line coach has a tremendous responsibility. It's a tough job because you have to fit the guys it's not like secondary coach where I don't know, there's just a combination involved along the offensive line that you got to get right. You may start the spring camp or even into August with a certain combination, and then you end up taking the left guard and moving him to right guard and taking and you're just trying to figure out not just who are the 5 best players, but how do they fit well together and work well together, because they've got to be more cohesive than any unit on the field. So, but is it surprising to you, despite the losses to the next level, that because of what they've been able to accomplish up front, they didn't, and I'm assuming that the players that are new to the offensive line are just as highly recruited and thought of coming out of high school, that they haven't been able to put together a better offensive line?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody thought that, the offensive line wouldn't necessarily be as good as last year, or even the year prior to that, when they've, like you look at the last 5 or 6 years, I mean, they've had guys like Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, Alex Barr, Sam Mustipher. They're all, starters or de facto starters in the NFL. They put 4 guys into the NFL this past season, with 3 being drafted. And I think a couple of them are starting right now as well, including Eichenberg for the Dolphins. He's starting left tackle right now. So it certainly wasn't expected to be their best offensive line. I do think the surprise is exactly what you said, is that not just Notre Dame fans, but I think the college football world is sort of used to Notre Dame having great offensive line play, great tight ends, at least in recent years, a really good running game. And that's sort of been their staple to making the college football playoff. And, sometimes even blowing some teams out because they can just grind you, in that second half, with everything I just said. But at the same time, you had guys like, I would say the one thing that's maybe not surprising with it is that outside of Jarrett Patterson, who I think is still one of the best centers in the country, I think he's been someone that's actually been a lot better than people realize this season, because everything around him has been sort of, just interesting to say the least. But Josh Lugg, who is their starting right tackle, who I think is trending up, but he's a 5th-year senior that never really started at Notre Dame. And I think that is something to be said as a player when you're a 5th-year senior that you've never even played, or at least you haven't played, you've never been named the starter for a full, 10 to 12 games or whatever it is. They brought in a transfer from Marshall and Kane Madden. And, for as good as he was at that level, I think he has shown that the Power 5 level might be a little bit too, he's certainly not an All-American. I think that he was, at least in the preseason. And then on top of that, they've had some injuries for sure. I mean, they're on their I wouldn't say they're on their 4th string left tackle, because I think Joe Halt's been better than the others. But they're on their 4th left tackle. They're on their 2nd left guard, not from injury purposes, but so it's sort of been a revolving door in that sense. But to answer your question, I mean, most of these guys have been recruited, at a high level. They were 4 or 5-star recruits. Offers from everywhere in the country. So I would say overall, it's been certainly surprising that they haven't been able to elevate as of right now.
Folks, you know what the deal is on Saturday nights, is that we do a call-in show sometime after all the primetime games, and we get a really good crowd in here. So in addition to that, we got USC Notre Dame post right here on, whether it's the Notre Dame channel or here on the main channel with Nathan, after Notre Dame and USC coming up. USC at 3-3, Notre Dame 5-1. And again, Notre Dame post game with Nathan after every Irish game. So since the comments are coming into the live chat about the quarterback situation, we'll go back there, because what would you do? You got these three quarterbacks, you know what their skill sets are, you know what the rest of the offense looks like that's going to have to play to those strengths and weaknesses. What would you do with it?
I've been on record on saying that I would probably stick with Buckner for the most part. I do think he offers the most upside, and he's a kid that has shown that, in his short time as a college quarterback, that I think he's going to continue to trend up. His athleticism is certainly there. His arm strength is certainly there. He was a 5-star at one point until his senior season was canceled, for a reason. And so I would go with him. I mean, I think there's an opportunity here for this to be a sort of a 2012 situation where you have Buckner as sort of the Everett Golson, and then Jack Cones can be the Tommy Rees. And obviously Notre Dame's offensive coordinator is Tommy Rees, so he knows that situation pretty well. So that is certainly something that I would look into. It doesn't look like they're doing that. I will say I would bet pretty good money that Jack Cones the starter on the first drive. And like I said, they're going to sprinkle in Tyler Buckner. But if they do that, what has to happen is you can't go to Buckner or Pine because of the poor play from Jack Cohn. Notre Dame's offense can be better if, when they use Buckner, it's scripted, if that makes sense. So you want to use Buckner in situations where Tommy Rees and Brian Kelly are on the headset together and they're saying, hey, let's get Buckner a drive here just to mix things up. Not let's get Buckner a drive here because Cohn has had 3 bad series in a row and we're down 13 in the last 2 games they've played. And same with Drew Pine. It can't be let's go to Drew Pine to bring a spark because, Cohn's just not getting it done and the offensive line's not giving him any time. So the hope is obviously the offensive line continues to improve. And then, like I mentioned, you can play Jack Cohn as much as you want. And then, like when Buckner comes in, maybe he makes the defense or keeps the defense honest, gets them tired a little bit with his legs. Pass rushers can't, get to the quarterback as quick as they want to. And then all of a sudden you have a pretty good, college quarterback duo situation going on.
Got Nathan Erbach on the line here. You can catch his podcast, Golden Homers. Golden Homers, how's that going?
It's going well. Just recorded our 8th episode this past week. Again, my co-host is Mason Plummer, who does a great job. Used to work for BGI on Rivals, and met him, a few years back. Just both of us with our covering of Notre Dame and love for Notre Dame in general. But no, it's been going well so far. Got some sponsors rolling in, which is nice. So might actually start getting paid for some of the stuff we talk about, and our viewership is continuing to sort of to rise as well. So no, it's definitely been a good start to it for sure. We've
got Savage Dog, who's got obviously a Georgia connection here, but he actually thinks Notre Dame should have beat Cincinnati. Does that make sense to you?
Not when you look at it from, like you mentioned, like Cincinnati kind of controlled the game, for the most part. I will say though that, Notre Dame on the opening drive went all the way down, and then Jack Cohn threw a really, really bad interception, in the red zone, or in the end zone, I should say. And that would have put up Notre Dame 7-0 just to start the game. They looked really good, to start. And I will say that there were certainly spurts in that game where I felt Notre Dame was clearly the better team from an athleticism standpoint. And you can just tell, the recruiting that Notre Dame brings in versus, or the type of athletes that Notre Dame brings in versus Cincinnati was evident. But, kudos to Cincinnati on, they're a really well-coached team. Luke Fickell does a great job there. I mean, they have a veteran team pretty much everywhere, one of the best cornerbacks in the country, and he locked down Notre Dame's best receiver in Kevin Austin. So, it's hard to say that Notre Dame should have won that game or deserved to win that game. And I think he just mentioned, or he just put another comment in, self-inflicted wounds. I mean, that's certainly the case as well. I think it was 3 turnovers to 0 or something like that, with a couple ugly ones that gave Cincinnati really good field position.
Below 0 natties. All right. Mark, this better be good. I'm missing some bare knuckle boxing on Pluto for this. So I don't know who's there at the Nathan Erbach household that there could be any bare knuckle boxing. No, nobody's here currently right now that we could provide that kind of entertainment. So
I think this was the same guy mocking my hairline a few moments ago too. So.
You can always multitask. You can listen to us and still catch some bare knuckle boxing. Do both. Wouldn't want to take you away from that for sure. All right. So we've got USC coming up this week. Talented roster, but we know what the deal is. They're not very good. They're losing to Oregon State and Stanford. These games are like 42-13 in the fourth quarter. It's bad. They've beaten USC's 3 wins are against San Jose State, Washington State, and somebody else who's awful. I thought I had it right there for a second. I can't come up with it. But another pretty lousy team. North Carolina is nothing close to what we thought they were going to be. They're currently 3-3. That's the next game, both at home. Then Navy at home. Navy's not very good. Not a stellar vintage Ken Nui-Matalolo Navy team. At Virginia, playing better recently. Bronco Mendenhall's got them at 5-2, I believe. Georgia Tech, Stanford on the road. Stanford's at 3-4. Their claim to fame, of course, the Oregon win, but otherwise. So Notre Dame's better than every one of these teams. It's not even debatable, but it's not so decided that they can just, roll the helmets out and win all the games. There's about 3 or 4 teams that it's feasible could beat them. So they could trip up once. Any more than once, I'd be somewhat surprised, not shocked, but somewhat surprised. So they're 5-1 right now. They win the rest of the games. Is anybody determining some kind of path to the playoff? Is there any talk out there about making that work?
I don't think so. They'd have to have a lot of things kind of go in their favor. I think first and foremost, they'd have to look really, really good, and probably most, if not all of the remaining games. And then they'd have to have some people behind them, lose. Cincinnati would probably have to lose to a team they shouldn't lose to. Big Ten's going to have to continue to beat each other up. Same with the SEC and stuff like that. But no, I don't see it. Personally, obviously 11-1 would certainly get them to a really nice bowl game, New Year's Six bowl. Maybe 10-2, like I said, if things kind of go their way a little bit, and obviously Notre Dame's the brand you want in those types of games because they'll bring a crowd. But no, overall, this isn't the year that they're going to make the college football playoff. And I think even going into the season, a lot of Notre Dame fans had their doubts. But it is sort of interesting because this is probably the weakest schedule they've had in a while. But again, it's probably also the weakest Notre Dame team that we've seen over the last couple of years. And obviously that's probably the reason why they've lost a game so far.
Yeah. And again, not weak because of their intent, but Wisconsin's always better. Virginia Tech's typically a little bit better. USC's typically better. North Carolina was supposed to be a lot better this year. And other teams certainly have better years most of the time, Stanford, Florida State in particular. Our guy D-Rock Irish has jumped on the line. Well, before that, Tyler is calling the Cincinnati win at Notre Dame the best road win in college football. Oregon, Ohio State, I'm going to go with that one.
I would agree with you there.
I lost the comment here, but it had to do with recruiting. It wasn't necessarily anything specific, but our guy D-Rock Irish had commented that Saturday night's going to be a big night for recruiting visits.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is one thing I know me and you sort of discussed before we hopped on live here. I don't want to say it's one of the bigger recruiting weekends that Notre Dame's had, over the last 5 seasons or whatever, but certainly with no 2020 season, with recruits being allowed to be on campus and stuff like that, it certainly feels like it. And it's nice to have this back. They've had some other decent recruiting weekends this year. Cincinnati was one where a lot of guys were on campus as well. But just when you look at it from top to bottom against USC, it's a really, really, there's a lot of top-notch recruits. Just looking at the 2022 class alone, A lot of their commits are going to be in attendance. They have the current LSU 5-star quarterback, Walker Howard, is going to be on campus. I think with the situation with Ed Orgeron, he's certainly kind of looking around a little bit and has a really good relationship with Tommy Rees. So that's definitely someone to keep in mind. Xavier Nalanka, who I think was just elevated to the number 10 player in the country on the 24/7 rankings. He's a safety, like I said, out of Iowa. Notre Dame, Iowa, Ohio State battling for his services. So that's definitely why I think it's probably down to Notre Dame and Iowa there. And he's taken his official visit to Notre Dame, or it might be an unofficial. I forget if he took an official visit during the summer. Anthony Lucas and Hiro Kanu, who are both top 100 defensive linemen, are both going to be on campus as well. And then a slew of 2023 kids. A couple of them are 5-stars, and I believe Sonny Styles is going to be on campus, who's actually the brother of Lorenzo Styles Jr., who's currently a wide receiver at Notre Dame. Drake Bowen, who's a current 5-star linebacker out of Indiana, is going to be on campus. And just, a lot more, several more, just top targets in the 2022 and 2023 class specifically. And then sprinkled in, I think, are some underclassmen in the 2024 class that Notre Dame is pretty high on to start. So definitely the best recruiting weekend they've had, or the most impactful recruiting weekend they've had in a while.
Nathan Urbach is here, folks, from Golden Homers. That's his podcast. So follow Nathan on Twitter. I should have his Twitter on the banner. I do not. It's just Nathan Urbach, right?
Nathan_Urbach.
Nathan _Urbach. So Nathan _Urbach on Twitter. I'll pull up his name here in just a second. Then, of course, you got Golden Homers is the podcast, and they've knocked out 8 episodes. So join him for some Notre Dame talk, little baseball, little fun, little whatever, right?
Yeah, no, it's sort of like, I think I've mentioned this a few times. It's sort of a play on words. Obviously, Golden Homers, with kind of being the Golden Domers. And then me and my co-host Mason are both big-time Chicago sports baseball fans, I should say. He's a White Sox fan. I'm a Cubs fan, so the Homers sort of plays in there with the baseball. But we dabble in a few things, and we'll certainly talk about Notre Dame basketball as well. We throw in a little fantasy football here and there, and then pretty much whatever they what people want to hear that follow us, we're certainly intrigued with, and we just kind of like to talk back and forth for an hour or so once a week.
Very cool. Good time. Folks, we got post game here with Nathan and Ben Belden after every Notre Dame game. So this week it's going to be right here on the main channel, or you can check it out on the Notre Dame channel. And I would like everyone that's a Notre Dame fan to subscribe here at the Voice of College Football on our Notre Dame channel. We got about 600 subs over there. We would love to get to 1,000. So get us to 1,000 on these. And even if, hey, I ask this shamelessly from time to time. Hey, if you follow the channel, you like what we do here at the Voice of College Football, even if you're not a Notre Dame fan, go over there and subscribe to the Notre Dame channel. Subscribe to all the channels. Then here's the deal I'll make with you. We get safely above 1,000, and you can unsubscribe if you want to. Go right ahead and unsubscribe. That's fine. Once we get past 1,000, we're usually off and sailing pretty well. So you can unsubscribe, but get us to 1,000 here on the Notre Dame and the other channels here at the Voice of College Football. And again, post game right here, main channel and the Notre Dame channel after the game with Nathan. Any big surprises from this team? Any breakout players? I always want to ask that question about it. Who's standing out or anything like that recently?
I think a couple guys to keep in mind that maybe weren't on the radar of at least the college football landscape to start the season. Cam Hart is playing really good opposite of Clarence Lewis this year at corner. He's a guy that certainly has the natural ability. Came to Notre Dame as a wide receiver and transitioned to corner, and so brings those ball skills to the defensive side of the ball. And I think offers a lot of upside, at the NFL level as well, down the road. First year starting, so I would hope he comes back next year. I think he's technically a junior academically, so he can leave. But no, that's definitely a guy to keep in mind on the defensive side of the ball. And then on offense, it's the usual suspects. in general. I mean, Michael Mayer, probably the best tight end in the country. Kyron Williams, one of the better running backs in the country. Kevin Austin, Braden Lindsay are the two starters on the outside with Avery Davis in the slot. But Chris Tyree's probably going to be out this week, or if he's not, it's going to be in a very limited role, and he's their backup running back and kick returner, and a dynamic athlete, 4.3 speed. So he's a guy that, even though he's a backup by name, certainly is big for them offensively. But Logan Diggs last week against Virginia Tech stepped up big time. I think he had like 6 carries for 29 yards, but more importantly was good in the good at pass blocking. Didn't make any major mistakes or anything like that, and the coaching staff seems to really like him. So Logan Diggs is maybe the guy to keep an eye on this week. As a guy who, could possibly break out, maybe score a goal line touchdown or something like that.
Nathan, we've got a comment coming in from Christopher here, and I don't know if you're going to be able to make anything out of it. If you can, take off with it, because I can't really, but you're the Notre Dame guy. More boring runs from Kyron Williams, does 2 things. Number 1, lets Williams maybe break off a big run, even if he's mostly running into a wall. And number 2, lets cone pass without defense seeing it coming. We're talking about staying with the running game, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and it's certainly, like I said, the offensive line is trending up, which means the running game is trending up a little bit as well. So if I would say the last, at least against Virginia Tech, they were able to, to pick up, 4 to 6 yards at a time, and that really helped the offense just kind of getting, third and manageable situations. And then obviously if the running game's there, it's going to help. It's going to help with the play action, and and you got to keep the defense honest, so the pass rushers won't necessarily be able to, I guess, be on their heels or whatever.
Folks, join us on Patreon. I make my predictions there. Top 25 plus other games there. 12-6 against the spread this past week. And 85-58 will make you some money. So 85-58 against the spread this year, 12-6 last week. And then we got 20 media members that we do a 12-pack competition each and every week. They're on Patreon. Plus Steve Merrill from Wager Talk and Pro Sports Info gives his under the radar selection. You see Nathan's name right there. You put an underscore in between Nathan Erbach and you find him on Twitter and track him right to his podcast, Golden Homers. I love the name because it's just the synergy is just perfect. Golden Homers, Golden Domers, Homers baseball. They're Homers because they're Notre Dame fan. It all works together.
Yeah, no, even if we didn't really talk a lot about baseball, which at least as of right now, we're not dabbling in it too much with both of our teams out of it, but we're it kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit.
Nathan, if I want to go a different direction and start naming these channels something clever, something catchy, I'm going to call on you.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Mark.
So I've not come up with anything besides, 15 or 20 people calling us the voice of college football. So we went with that. That seemed to work. So, all right. Notre Dame needs to hire James Franklin.
A hard no on that.
No, I don't think you need that. All right. I think we're good. I don't know what the spread is on this game. I don't know if you followed that.
I think it's 6. It was 6.5. I think it's gone up to 7, and it's been between 6 and 7 the entire week. I would probably lean towards Notre Dame covering, but one thing that Notre Dame has proven this year is that they're going to make every game close, or at least into the fourth quarter. So hopefully that trend does not continue this week, and they can, got buddies of mine like John Kennedy of Always Irish can breathe a little bit easier while watching the game. But yeah, no, I mean, I could see this game. I could see this being Notre Dame's best offensive performance to date, and their defense is steady. So it wouldn't surprise me if Notre Dame covered.
Yes, we've got connections here at the Voice of College Football to quite a few Notre Dame guys, and of course Nathan. And yeah, John's he's a character. He gets fired up for the games, of course. You got Brian Driscoll and others. You mentioned Ben Belden and Mason Plummer as well. Good stuff from our Notre Dame contingent. So since it is USC, Nathan, and this is sometimes good conversation before we let everyone go, the rivalry discussion, where do you place USC on your own personal Notre Dame list of rivals?
For me, it's not even close. I mean, it's USC's number one. That might be because I live in Las Vegas, so I grew up going to USC Notre Dame games in Southern California, every other year. But at the same time, like you mentioned, it's the greatest national rivalry in college football, or intersectional rivalry, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's right up there with the greats. Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn, Army, Navy, Florida, Georgia. All those are right up there. So I think Notre Dame and USC is not only the number one Notre Dame rival, but it's also one of the top 4 or 5 rivalries in the the entire college football landscape.
All right, folks, we'll catch you sometime tomorrow night. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. It's typically either before the football on Friday night. I don't know that anybody significant's playing tomorrow night. I don't believe. So sometime tomorrow night, we'll get together for a call-in show, and we'll wrap it up right now on our Notre Dame talk. Join Nathan after the ball game right here, the Voice of College Football, on the Notre Dame channel, or right here on the main channel as well. USC, Notre Dame, the Irish trying to go to 6-1. Nathan, we always appreciate it. Have a good night. Enjoy the game as well.
All right. Thanks, Mark. See you guys soon.
All right, everyone. One more time. We're here all weekend, of course, covering college football for you. So I will be here tomorrow night. Have that bell ready for the notifications to know when we go live. And then on Saturday, of course, I will be delivering instant analysis throughout the day. Maybe we go live during the day, possibly, meaning me, for a call-in show. But, we'll be here late night at about 11 p.m. Eastern time with our call-in show on Saturday night. So please be here. We had an amazing crowd like 2 weeks ago. And I think that was like Alabama, Texas A&M, and their Michigan, Nebraska, and people were excited. And then this last weekend was a little ho-hum, even though it was a great day of college football. Our crowd wasn't quite, it was still a nice little crowd of 250 to 300, but it was like 700 the week before. So please grab some friends, bring them in. College football talk Saturday night. And again, we'll have instant analysis throughout the day and other team-specific post-game shows. If you love a team, most likely we got you covered here at the Voice of College Football. Ohio State and Michigan, Penn State and Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, USC, Texas A&M, Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia Tech channels. So grab your team. And again, if you just want to support what we do here at the Voice of College Football, get us to 1,000 on those channels. It would be amazing, especially Iowa. The Iowa channel's amazing. Corey Brada does an amazing job of posting content on a regular basis. Don Patterson, who's a longtime Iowa coach, joins us with analysis there. So please subscribe on the Iowa channel. And again, if you're doing it just to help us out, I appreciate it so much. And you can always unsubscribe when we get well past 1,000. All right. Thanks for being here. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat. For upsets this week, according to Dependent Fanatic. So I will say it again, as I've said it many times, that there's typically about 4 upsets per weekend. About 20 to 25% of the top 25 games are upsets, and that's up to 41% this year. Isn't that crazy? 41% upsets. We've got SMU playing right now against Tulane, and we've got a NFL game as well. All right. See everybody soon. You guys have a great night. Enjoy the football. We'll see you Friday. It's only Thursday night. We'll see you tomorrow night right here at the Voice of College Football.